Group Captain Ajay Kumar. Always a pleasure being here. As we'd like to say, readers are leaders, and that's what is the motivation that keeps us coming back here. And thank you, MMA, for the opportunity to be here, part of this event. The choice of the book, I owe an explanation to that. One of the only things, and we've heard this maybe even a cliche, that the only constant is change, right? And there's a constant change that's happening. We're all aware that over the last year and a half, we've been talking about this new wave called AI, right? So how is it going to impact us? Are we learning from it? In fact, MMA is on top draw in AI. If you notice, the introduction is an AI product. So are we kind of changing to stay relevant? In fact, changing more proactively is really the question. And that's what is a big challenge for everybody. So this book is something that provides a certain framework of what we need to look at in terms of how we navigate this space called change and how do we come out on top. So it gives you a very nice framework, and that's what we're going to talk about. I have a brief presentation that I'm going to kind of do to set the context of the book and give you a broad overview of the book, and then we will get to Sujita and Vidya for their expert. They've all taken trouble to read the book. Thank you so much for spending those midnight hours reading the book and forming your opinions. With that, can I have you? So this is a book, and incidentally, this was also done on AI. The entire PPT was done on AI. So this was my first attempt at using AI for creating a PowerPoint yesterday. So I said, if I'm talking about change, I have to also adopt change, and that's where it always starts. The interesting concept in this book has been explained in the form of three components in this, and that image I have shown here. It is of a rider, an elephant, and a path. These are the three elements that the author of the book has used. The rider represents the rational part of our mind, our thought process, what we want to do, what we think is important to do. The elephant, which is the bigger piece, is the emotional part, right? And the path is how we want it to go, where do we want it to go, and that's really those three components of any change that we incur. Normally, the path is very clear. For us, for all of us who travel to be here, the path is very clear. We know that we have to be here at 5:30, 6 o'clock. Rationally, we know. Emotionally, we also want to attend this event, so it's very, very clear. But the problem starts occurring when the rational and the emotional are at loggerheads with each other. Let us say rationally you wanted to come, but emotionally it's not something that you're connected to. Then the author explains that it's usually the elephant that gets its way. You may be a person who is sitting on top of the elephant, but the elephant is the bigger one, right? We can see the image also. So he says, how do you therefore make sure that the rider and the elephant are in unison so that you can make that change happen? So that's really the context of this book, and in some form. Chip and Dan are brothers. Dan is the best-selling author. The person wearing, the person on the right without the glasses is Dan, his brother Chip, and they've written multiple books. All of them are bestsellers. Apart from this, they've made to stick, Why Some Ideas Survive and Others Die. And they've also written two other books, The Power of Moments and Decisive, How Better Choices in Life and Work, How to Make Better Choices in Life and Work. So they are kind of prolific thought leaders and writers. They've been able to elucidate this whole concept of change management in us. So the key aspects are broadly divided, like I said, into three parts in the book. One is that talks about the rider. And like I said, the rider is the rational side of things. It's the well thought out, rational, your intelligent part of the whole decision making process. And he says one of the things that we need to do is not necessarily that we need to kind of solve all the problems. We can just look at what has worked, a small part of what has worked, and just copy it. And he's given a brilliant example of institutions that have copied what has worked, and that's been a huge change. In our case also, we have seen in our daily life simple problems which are solved. You may have a large population with a huge problem, but one part of the population would have solved that problem with a simple step. And if you're able to copy that and spread that message across, I think we're at peace. I can remember an example, of course the book talks about the various examples, but I remember this story I heard of McDonald's. Right? So McDonald's had about 30,000 stores, and way back in the 90s, the founder was, apart from the burger, they used to sell those French fries. And the founder of McDonald's was trying to find out why people aren't buying French fries, and he looked at the data sheet across all those thousands of stores, and he found one store, a place in America, which was selling tons of French fries, while every other store was unable to sell French fries, because people came for burgers, they bought burgers, they ate, but nobody was selling French fries. But that one store in a remote location was selling French fries by tons, right? And so this guy was quite surprised, and data, it's always about data, right? So he went to that store, incognito. He didn't tell that he was a owner of McDonald's. So he walked into that store, and he sat in a corner and observed. And every time somebody went to order their burger, the cashier would ask them, "Can I add a packet of French fries?" Was a standard question he used to ask everybody. And invariably, people who came to buy burgers were in a happy state of mind. They would say, "Sure," and he billed them on it. And therefore, every burger sold in that store also sold a packet of French fries along with it. This was a huge learning, right? And therefore, this Ray Kroc, who's the founder of McDonald's, came back and he gave a script to every cashier across McDonald's. And he said, "Please follow these exact words." Every time somebody placed an order, they would look at the menu card and say, what are the items they have not asked for? And they would say, "Can I add a pack of French fries? Can I add a glass of Coke?" So on and so forth. And it just changed the fortunes of McDonald's. Overnight, their sales on the other products started shooting up, right? So even today, if you go to a McDonald's store, there is likelihood that there will be a cashier who will ask you an additional question apart from what you order for. So that's their trademark model. This came out of the fact that you have to observe one bright spot and see whether you can copy that across. Just a simple example. So there are multiple models. Find out the critical move that will enable the change to happen, map out those critical aspects, and look at the destination that you want to reach. So those are the aspects. We will talk more about it. I don't want to kind of... The next is, it's great that the rider is extremely intelligent, but what about the elephant? How do you motivate the elephant, really? That's really the one that's going to take you. You can't have the rider in a different direction and the elephant in a different directions. So he says, make sure that people or yourself who want to change get that, feel that spark of change. You need to be enthusiastic. You need to have the passion that you need to change. You can't change if there is no passion. So ignite the passion, get that feeling going. And he says, Make that change very small, simple change, and celebrate those small efforts that are going, so that you can kind of make that change and move towards that and shrink the change. And he says, invest in growing. In a corporate context, he says, invest in the growth mindset of people. That's very, very important. Invest in, instill that thought of why this is going to be so superior in that sense. And last but not the least, he says, shape the path. The rider is important, the elephant is important, but the path needs to be clear for both of them to go. Bring clarity. Clarity is exceptionally important in change management. You must know where you're going, how much of time, effort, energy it's going to take, and then that kind of helps you make the change in whatever you want to do. So he says, tweak the environment. Make sure that the situation and the environment that you are in is in order. You know, I used to have a running coach, and one of the things he used to say, and very, very pertinent, I follow till date, is, he says, if you want to get up in the morning at 5 a.m. and run, then you better make sure that you sleep early, of course, that's important. But he said, keep your shoe out, keep your t-shirt out, keep your running gear in order, everything keep it ready, so that when you get up, you have no excuses to go back to sleep. Everything is in order and the situation is right for you to go for a run. Right? So similarly, tweak the environment to make sure that the change is possible. Don't create friction that prevents you from making the change. Build habits. Of course, all change is all about building new habits. And then he says, borrow behavior, because behavior is really contagious. If you can spread the word, then the change will happen. If today you've been successful in dieting, make sure that you kind of make sure you enjoy the moment, and that kind of propels you to be in diet tomorrow, that propels you to be on diet next day, so on and so forth. So just rally yourself to make that change happen. So those are really the context. I just wanted to set the context of this whole book. And we're going to get the opinion of the guests as well. But I think this is a great book for all of us. It's not just for management people. I think all of us need change in different aspects of how we live and what we embrace. I think this book, I think, will play a fantastic role in enabling that, in conceptualizing that in some form of framework. That's what I take away, but I'm going to let the guests speak and get their opinion.